Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Big Ten Media Days continues, and dear friend of the show for a lot of years, Rick Pizzo.
Always good to see you, Chris.
Hey, thank you, Rick. You're just busy, man. You're hosting, you're setting up shop, you're talking to coaches. I mean, you're in the thick of it, and you have been for a lot of years with the Big Ten Network, and season's just around the corner. How much golf did you get in? Let me ask you that. How was the summer?
Not enough. The right answer is always not enough. Plenty. No, but this is the demarcation line, right?
Yeah,
this is where it kind of becomes real. We talk about college football 12 months out of the year.
We do.
At least we do in my household.
Yeah.
But when you get to this point in Indianapolis, and you do, and you look around, you see all the coaches, you see all the players, kind of becomes real. You start talking about who's going to be good, who's not going to be good, what are the storylines. There's no storylines here, by the way, just so you know. There's nothing outside the lines at all. It's all straight and narrow this year inside the Big Ten. Listen, this is always a great event. It's always great to reconnect with the coaches. This is our 17th and my 17th season covering Big Ten football. Wow. For the network. So we've seen a few coaching changes, but at the same time, you have guys like Kirk Ferentz, who's been here this entire time. You get James Franklin, now a decade in at Penn State. So I think it really is always great to come here and see all the new mixing with, I don't want to say the old, let's say the familiar.
The established? The
established, if you will, the veterans, because they enjoy it as well.
Rick Pizzo's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Rick, I want to start with two familiar faces in college football, but two new landing spots. Of course, you have Coach Fickell at Wisconsin, but our audience really excited about Matt Rhule. And Rhule did magic at Temple, did so at Baylor, and I think he's pretty optimistic. We'll get a chance to shout at him tomorrow. But your takeaway, your thoughts, we haven't talked to you since the hire, and you know what? He'll be center stage tomorrow, Coach Rhule.
Well, I got to meet Matt actually on the field before a Penn State game when Temple played at Penn State when he was at Temple. I'm not sure exactly what year that was. Before, obviously, he got the opportunity to do great things at Baylor as well. Just a down-to-earth guy, a guy who believes in a style of football that I think Nebraska fans have wanted to see for a while, right? He believes in a tough, physical, don't make silly mistakes, and everything will kind of figure itself out if we do that philosophy. And I think that's going to play out really well in the West this year. Now, there will be a transition next year when you go divisionless because perhaps that philosophy gets altered a little bit based on your schedule and who you have to play. But what he did at Temple was terrific. What he did at Baylor, I think, truthfully, is you could consider it one of the greatest turnarounds in the history of college football based on what he inherited and what he did with that program. And then I had the opportunity after his introduction to do the first interview with him right after he had his press conference. He joined us on Big Ten Network. And you immediately want to root for him when you talk to him. He just seems like a really honest, genuine kind of guy. And, yeah, I would draw that comparison to kind of Kirk Ferentz. Every time I talk with Kirk, I'm left just thinking, like, he's a guy that I'd want to play for. He's the kind of guy I'd want my son to go play for it. I'd feel really comfortable with him being in that situation. I think that speaks volumes about Matt as a person, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to be judged by what he does on the field, and what has happened on the field with the last couple of coaches who have come through Lincoln, as you know better than anybody else, has not been what the fan base wanted.
It's Rick Pizzo with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Rick, dare I say that the expectations in Husker Nation are actually reasonable this year? It feels like 6-6 in a bowl game would keep a lot of Husker fans happy. But I want to get your thoughts on the future with the Big Ten going divisionless in 2025, with the schedule becoming much more difficult, not only for Nebraska, but for most schools in the Big Ten once that occurs. How important do you think it is that Matt Rhule builds some momentum this season and has the ball rolling before the Big Ten goes divisionless in 2025?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I do. I feel like you don't want to go into a second transition year because this is a transition year. Anytime you change head coaches, it is a transition year. And then you would go back to back with transition year to transition year with two new members and going divisionless. So I think it is important to get some type of momentum. And I think you bring up a good point. I think any type of postseason appearance would absolutely be building that momentum. The days of 9-4 weren't good enough. Those days are gone for now. Now you build to get to a bowl game, then you build to win 8, and then the expectations get to be back there. But absolutely, if this team were able to go to a bowl game this year, that's massive progress. To me, probably above and beyond what you would expect, and I think a huge step in the right direction.
Rick Pizzo, Big Ten Network with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Rick, a thought on Sims, Nebraska's quarterback, and the West is the portal quarterback division.
Yeah, it is.
If Nebraska gets extraordinary play from Sims or above average, will that, I should say, enhance that win total? I mean, do you think
absolutely.
it's correlation?
No, I think there's a huge correlation, and here's why. When you talk about that Matt Rhule philosophy that I discussed, that's easier to implement defensively, because defensively it's a little bit more about see ball, attack ball, or see ball, stay in your position, let the other guy attack ball because it's his job, execute that game plan. That is about playing hard, playing tough, playing smart. Now, offensively, it's a little bit of a different scenario because you are typically a little bit further behind when a new coaching staff comes in. You're installing new stuff. You're trying to get on the same page with the other skill position players offensively. If your quarterback is not that guy that's able to do that, it becomes remarkably difficult in year one, because what that typically means, shorter drives, turnovers, and that defense faces pressure that it shouldn't be facing early on in a tenure. So, yes, you get a quarterback to play, and he doesn't have to play lights out, all Big Ten performer kind of style. Look at what Cade McNamara did at Michigan before J.J. McCarthy took over that job.
Playoffs.
It was a... Thank you. Look at what Iowa has done over the course of the past decade, continually either getting back to the Big Ten championship game or being in the mix. Go ahead and name me the 3 explosive Iowa quarterbacks that we've seen over the past decade to 15 years, because they don't exist.
His last name's Banks, and it was 20 years ago.
Thank you. So my point being, you don't need that quarterback to be a game changer all the time. You need him to be a guy who doesn't cost you games at the most important times.
Rick Pizzo's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Rick, whenever you look at Wisconsin and Fickell, I think there's always going to be that intrinsic tie between Rhule and Fickell, at least in the minds of Husker fans, with them being hired in the same year. And Husker fans have raised the eyebrows at the fact that Fickell wants to change Wisconsin, what's made them successful over the past 20-plus years. What's your take on the Fickell hire at Wisconsin and what he's trying to change with the Badgers?
Well, I think he is trying to change because he sees the evolution of college football and also what he did at Cincinnati. You can't go from the kind of success that he had at Cincinnati and becoming the coach to lead the first ever non-Power 5 team to that level and then say, well, I'm going to go back and run this old philosophy. It's not necessarily mine because it's what this school did. No, the school didn't hire you to come in and run their stuff offensively. The school hired you because they know what you've done, and they want you to do that at Wisconsin. I think that this is a hire not just for this year, this is a future hire. We've talked about the change in this conference and going divisionless and bringing in USC and UCLA. Do I think that Iowa-Wisconsin philosophy can still win? Yes. Do I think that you are more likely to get back to the college football playoff and to get to the level where you want to be on a consistent basis by playing the new style of college football? I do. And I think a lot of that has to do with recruiting. And Wisconsin was stuck, and I have a ton of respect for Paul Chryst, but Wisconsin was stuck in a little bit of a rut in terms of recruiting only those, that mantra, right? We're going to recruit 2- and 3-star guys because it's all we can get. We're going to turn them into 4- and 5-star guys. Luke Fickell is still going to recruit those Midwestern tie, hardcore offensive lineman kind of guys, but he wants 4- and 5-star guys when they are on campus, not guys he has to turn into those guys, because then you have freshmen that can compete right away. And if you're divisionless and you're playing against the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Penn States, bringing USC and Lincoln Riley and what he has to deal with, those are the kind of guys you need on your roster from day one.
Old Jimmy Walden said it best, the old Iowa State coach and Washington State coach. We talked to him from time to time. He's like 5 years or 5 stars.
Right.
And get me both.
Yeah.
is what he said.
I'll take all of the above. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me fill out both. Rick Pizzo with us, a couple more minutes here, Hail Varsity Radio. And, Rick, I want to spend a moment on Tony White, and did just phenomenal work at Syracuse. 3-3-5 or a variation of that coming to Lincoln. What do your peeps at Syracuse say about White and the defense that was up there doing things at a high level for the Orange.
Yeah, I will say, Chris, I think too much is made of
the term 3-3-5.
Yes,
Yep, sure.
and a lot
It's
of the terminology that people want to use about whatever it is, 3-3-5, 4-2-5. Jim Knowles uses kind of a weird hybrid style at Ohio State as well. It's about what the players do offensively. It's about finding the right guys to fit your system. And I think the Big Ten has the perfect example. What Ryan Walters did last year at Purdue, it was the perfect mix of a coach who came in with a philosophy but adjusted that philosophy because of how good they were in the secondary. Mm-hmm. So he became a little bit more back seven based than he typically would have been otherwise. I think that's what Coach White has succeeded in doing, is realizing where you are strongest and you adjust around. This can be your base philosophy any way you want. You can call it whatever you want. You can put whatever numbers on it that you want, give it a nomenclature. But at the end of the day, how do you put your best players in the position to make a difference defensively? And I think that's the praise that he gets. That's the most common, this is why he's a good coach, because he understands who those players are and then allows those players to make his defense and his team better.
Rick, in the Big Ten, whenever we're talking about Nebraska and the new hires, is it more important to get the defense right or the offense right early on?
Both, all of the above, and everything, plus special teams.
Yeah, right?
It's true. Like, I'd love to say it's one or the other, but it's not.
It's all of it.
You cannot be a team in this league that is one-sided. I mean, hey, it was Nebraska that stopped Iowa from going to the Big Ten championship game last year. Iowa had to win one game on the Friday after Thanksgiving at home against a team in a little bit of a disarray with an interim head coach, and they weren't able to do it.
Against a team that doesn't give up 20 points.
Thank you, because they were not a balanced team, and we saw all the struggles they had offensively, and yes, the quarterback injuries, but at the end of the day, you have to be a little bit of both. So I'm not trying to discredit or not answer your question, Elijah, because it's a totally fair question, but if you want to compete at the level that I know this fan base and this school has been at and wants to be at again, it can't be one or the other. It has to be both.
Rick, we'll get you out on this, and you have Michigan it's gone from, what's Coach Harbaugh doing to the, back-to-back playoffs, even changing quarterbacks like he did at San Francisco, right? Alex Smith to Kaepernick, and it was the right call. Does the Big Ten break through this year? And we know that Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State are three title contenders. Can they get it done this year? Can a Michigan or Ohio State win it? When you look at what Georgia has, you're going to have Bama, you're going to have Clemson, you've got your usual 5 or 6 suspects.
Yeah, I mean, listen, last year Ohio State is a field goal away. It's people almost forget. I mean, a missed field goal at the end of the game keeps Georgia away from the biggest blowout in national championship game history. Ohio State's playing for the national title, and based on what we saw in that game, you think Ohio State wins that game. And I think people kind of forget about that because of Michigan's wins over Ohio State the last couple of years, including one in Columbus. Michigan getting back to the college football playoffs 2 years in a row, and the roster that they have. Clearly, Michigan has shown that they can get there. Ohio State, people almost forget that they were there last year because they lost to Michigan. Like, they were there. They were one kick away from beating Georgia. So the short answer to your question is absolutely, but I'll throw this out there, and this may surprise you, and I've learned, maybe I haven't learned my lesson of not picking against Ohio State, but I actually think if you were going to ask me right now, with Michigan being the best team in the Big Ten, who the second best team on paper in the Big Ten is, I would choose Penn State over Ohio State right now. And I know a lot of that depends on a young quarterback in Drew Aller, but I got to tell you guys, Manny Diaz made all the difference defensively for that team last year. I think Drew Aller is the real deal. That 1-2 running back punch of Singleton and Katron Allen, and Penn State may have the best offensive line in the Big Ten. It was a question for the first 7 years of James Franklin's tenure. They may have the best offensive line in the Big Ten this year. I'm telling you, I think if it doesn't go through Ann Arbor, I think the Big Ten may go through Happy Valley this year.
They're just kind of forgotten about this
and I
year.
don't know why. It makes no sense to me.
No, you're right on with the offensive line, and Diaz has been good, and Franklin's recruited amazingly for a long time.
He's a great recruiter for a long, long time.
He's been right there, and you've had Michigan kind of rise up, and people are questioning Ohio State. Rick, it's going to be fun to watch Nebraska and the rest of the league.
Yep.
Awesome to see you again.